The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
The official opposition always wants to be seen as the government in waiting. Ontario's official opposition, the NDP, swears in a new leader on Saturday. Tonight, what the party under Marit Stiles needs to do now to convince people they're ready to form government in 2026. And should your cocktail come with a warning label? We'll hear why that's causing a stir. It's Tuesday, January 31st, and that's next on the agenda. Only once in Ontario history has the New Democratic Party come first and form government, under Bob Rae in 1990. But it's also the case that only once in Ontario history has the NDP come second twice in a row. That's happened over the past two elections, 2018 and 2022. With a new energetic leader in Davenport MPP Marit Stiles about to take over this weekend, it's got lots of New Democrats asking how the party makes the jump from second to first place once again. Well, we have some advice. Let's welcome, in Chelsea, Quebec, Carl Bélanger, former NDP National Director, now President of Traxion Strategies. In our nation's capital, Robin Sears, NDP strategist for 20 years, now an independent crisis communications advisor. And here in our studio, Sarah Singh, distinguished visiting practitioner at Toronto Metropolitan University and the former NDP member for Brampton Centre. Kim Wright, principal and founder of Wright Strategies and a longtime NDP consultant. And Michelle Irvin, former media relations officer and former acting communications director for the Ontario NDP caucus. Michelle, it's great to have you on our program. First time, I think.
Thank you. Great to
Everybody
be here.
else, great to see you all again. And, okay, let's start. Robin, I want to start with this. 43 elections in Ontario history. The NDP has only won one in 1990, and a lot of people thought it was a fluke. So we got to start with this first and basic question. Is victory for the New Democrats in 3.5 years truly possible?
Yes.
Why do you say?
Well, I think you can divide the period since the Rae government into two very long chapters, one under Howie Hampton and the second under Andrea Horwath. They rebuilt the party quite successfully, but they each, in my view, stayed too long, almost 13 years in each case. So Marit is at the beginning of a third chapter for the party, and she inherits a party that's not in bad shape financially, organizationally, in terms of staff. So she's taking stock of all of that and already planning some changes, I know. The second thing is I think you've got to figure out what it is you want to own as a leader of a party. Stephen Lewis in the 70s owned housing, rent, and the abuse of farmland in his view. Amazing that half a century later, we're still debating the use of farmland. Bob Rae owned car insurance, although that didn't turn out so well. And I think that Marit's got to find something that she has political ownership of. My preference would be health, second, housing. I think the other thing she's got to do is to be very careful not to discount the Liberals. Mrs. Scatcher, a friend of mine, said you can never count the Liberals dead unless you're standing on their chest with a blade through their heart. They have the ability to revive astonishingly. And I think she's a compelling personality, objective as I ain't. She's got a warmth and an empathy that is worth gold in politics. So yeah, I think their prospects are quite good.
Carl, I don't have to tell you, there's lots of people watching us right now who think there's no chance in heck, or let me say HE double hockey sticks, that the NDP has a shot at winning the next election. You want to convince them they're wrong?
Well, I mean, the NDP has never had two official opposition status in a row. So you could say that the base that they're building on right now is better than the one they had when Bob Rae formed government in 1990. So you can bet against the NDP. I'm willing to take that bet right now. But the issue for the NDP is that they need to achieve the first of the three things you need to do when you want to form government, and to convince Ontario that it's time to throw the bombs out. We're not there yet. Doug Ford remains fairly popular. The second job is to make sure that you offer an alternative that is palatable to a majority of voters. I'm not sure we're there yet either. And if you're able to succeed and be seen as the alternative to the government, then you make sure you don't drop the ball. And that's also something very difficult when you have a rookie leader that has not faced the electorate in this fashion so far. So there are challenges, but it is possible for the NDP to do that because the base has never been stronger than it is right now.
Sarah, what about it? Possible for victory next time?
Well, I think we have to be hopeful. And, I think as New Democrats, we definitely are. With Marit coming in, as Carl and Robin point out, I mean, she's very energetic. She connects very well with the public. I think the challenge is going to be finding those issues that are going to matter to voters and creating a platform that's going to resonate with them. I think that Marit is empathetic. She understands the province, the regional differences in the province. And I think if she can bring that and connect well with voters, I think we have a really good chance.
Coincidentally enough, Kim, I saw Marit Stiles at David Onley's funeral yesterday, and I gave her the heads up that we'd be having lots of advice for her on our program the following night. So I don't know, maybe she's watching, maybe she's not, but she knows that this is about to happen. Do you think this party actually can win the next time out?
Absolutely. So what I've seen, and having worked for in the Ray government with Howard Hampton, seeing what Andrea has done, knowing Marit also all the way through those various iterations, she is so good at not only being empathetic, but in a very authentic way. She can take really abstract, interesting, complex policy problems and make them personal to people. And politics is incredibly personal to people. They may not think that it is, but it's not these, academic moments. It is how you live, what you see, how you feel, how you take care of your family, how you build your community. And Marit has always been extraordinary about taking that. We don't have to worry about, can she make these complicated things personal? She does it every day. She has lived the various experiences. She came from Newfoundland. Mm-hmm. She moved to Ontario. She's built a family, built a life, but she's not just a downtown Toronto MPP. She's been out on the hustings across the province, understanding those regional differences. And anybody who says otherwise, it's big darn province with various differences, and understanding those and really living that talk, that's where Marit comes through. She also has been a party activist and member and builder for years. So she knows the hard work. Lots of people, and I'm not looking at the Liberals, but I'm looking at the Liberals, think that it's easy just to show up and come on TV. That's part of it. But the spade work, the building up those riding associations, leveraging what the party has done in places like Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke, where we came in a strong second, leveraging that to that next level of showing government. That's where I'm really excited about what Marit and her team can do.
I don't know if you ever thought you had a chance to win when you were working for Andrea Horwath, but next time, what do you think?
I think the stars could really align for us in the next election. If you look at the context at that point, when the next election rolls around, the Doug Ford Conservatives will be carrying the baggage of a very destructive 8 years in office. You've seen them cutting and privatizing precious public services like healthcare. They won't credibly be able to keep blaming the messes that Ontario is dealing with on the Liberals. They've gotten worse on the Conservatives' watch. Just look at hallway medicine. That's as rampant and as bad as it's ever been. And so, meanwhile, you have the Liberals who, in back-to-back elections, have not even been able to secure party status in the legislature. And at the same time, the NDP has formed a strong official opposition in back-to-back elections. And here you have an exciting new leader in Marit Stiles. So I'm really excited about 2026.
Okay, I'm not completely shocked to see that all five of you think that it's possible for the NDP to win next time. But here's the math. Somehow the NDP has to be able to find another 13, 14, 15% of the total vote in order to go from its decent second place showing to winning. And, well, we talked about this a little bit, Marit Stiles and I did, on this program. How long ago? 6 weeks ago. Why don't we play that clip? Sheldon, if you would.
All you have to do is see what Ford and the Conservative government are doing in communities across this province to see how people are losing hope. And we need to remind them and inspire them to believe that things can be different and give them some solutions. He is letting a lot of people down. And communities like Newmarket, that's one of them. There's a lot of people there right now, a lot of Conservatives disappointed in this government.
We heard Robin say earlier, Sarah, that Marit Stiles has to own an issue, and he made a couple of suggestions about housing and health care. You're the one person around here who's been elected, so I want to hear what you have to say about that. What's an issue that the NDP can own today that can make that math a reality for next time?
I definitely think it's healthcare. I would also say housing is another big one. But I think when we look at, as Michelle also points out, the state of healthcare in the province of Ontario continues to go from bad to worse. We see elements of privatization creeping in because the Ford government wants to have privatization in healthcare. And I think if we can have a very strong opposition and a really strong platform on how we intend to invest in healthcare, do things like repeal Bill 124, which we know is driving healthcare workers out of this province. I think having a good plan in place around how we're going to boost investments, how we're going to retain workers, how we're going to effectively address hallway medicine, which in a riding like the one I represented, we were ground zero in Brampton for hallway medicine. I think that will appeal to voters. But I think it's not just about the infrastructure of the hospitals, it's about the human resources, but also looking at healthcare from a holistic perspective, understanding that mental health needs to be invested in. We know that in the province of Ontario, young people are waiting over 2 years in some instances to get access to mental health services. Parents are frustrated by that, and privatizing our healthcare system isn't going to solve that problem. The same thing applies to long-term care. Connected to healthcare, we need to see a public model in long-term care to ensure that those public dollars are being invested in care and not ending up in the hands of private shareholders. So I think if Marit is able to leverage what is happening here in the province and provide a hopeful solution around healthcare, I think it's a win for us.
Robin, maybe you could sort of peel back the curtain a little bit and tell us, if you were sitting down with Marit Stiles and saying, look, here's the path to victory next time, here are the issues I've suggested you need to own, but here's the overarching vision you need to project to 16 million people in order to have most of them consider you for the first time ever. What's that thing you would tell her?
I think all the leaders next time will face a unique problem, which is we have a level of discontent, distrust, disappointment, anger, generically across the political spectrum and across the province about politics and government. There's a deep-seated unease about how governments dealt with the pandemic, dealt with the Great Recession, et cetera. And I think one of the things that Marit is in a good position to do is to not say this literally out loud, but I raised it with her just to sort of make the point. I'm mad as hell too. But I understand why you feel aggrieved. I understand how you feel cheated. I understand that you need a lot more sincerity and action on the part of the governments you elect. I think that's really going to be the turning point for the election in my mind. Unless, we all of a sudden start smiling again and everybody's happy by 2026. I think this is going to be a very unhappy electorate that all the leaders are going to have to face.
Kim, I remember David Crombie saying on this program, anger is not a good governing principle. Can you really gin people up and keep them angry for 3.5 years till next time?
It's harder to do for that 3 years. But what I'm actually looking for is swagger. I looked at that last election campaign, and neither Stephen Del Duca nor Andrea Horwath came at the electorate with swagger. In the 2018 campaign, Andrea was full of swagger. She was ready to govern. She was ready to lead. She had the confidence to do it.
She was in first place in the polls for a while.
Up until she showcased, or she refused at that point to showcase what her front bench looked like. So what Marit needs to do is have the poise and confidence that she's going to do this, have that human connection point, showcase this amazing team that she is assembling that has leaders that have been in the House that people have trusted, the stakeholders and the public have trusted, and that can show what is her life as a premier going to be? What is she going to do to make your life better? And you also have to consider that with 29 to 36% voter turnout, people want a reason to get off their couches and come and show up to vote, that it's going to be different.
29 to 36?
Depending on the riding. Certainly some ridings were terrible.
Because I think province-wide it was what last time, 40-something?
It was around 40, but in some ridings you saw numbers that were 29%. In our last municipal campaigns across the province, they were definitely in that low 20s, mid to mid 30s. People need a reason to get up. And I'll tell you, the more that leaders can showcase their personality, their authenticity, and have a bit of hope for people with that genuine swagger, that's how you bring more people.
All right, Carl, tell me this. You've worked for 4 different New Democrat leaders over the years, and one of the most precious commodities those leaders have in between elections is time. They have to manage their time brilliantly, frankly. What would you tell Marit Stiles about what she needs to do with her time over the next 3.5 years? How should she spend it?
Well, she should expose herself to the electorate. She needs to be known. She's unknown right now. In as much as she was a successful school trustee and very well spoken opposition MPP, most Ontarians don't know who she is. She's an unknown entity. So her mission right now is to frame our political persona for the Ontarians. And it's something that you cannot do if you just stay at Queen's Park. You need to get on the road, to be on the road, to be in a community, and not just the community where New Democrats have succeeded or could succeed. You need to go elsewhere. You need to be seen and heard everywhere. You need to show that you want this, that you truly believe you can be this, and you do that by being everywhere, for the next 3.5 years. Now, come the election time, you may focus on areas of growth, but right now, she needs to be seen and project that she is the premier in waiting. And you don't do that if you stay at Queen's Park.
Michelle, can I get you on that? 3.5 years, how should she spend her time? You used to do communications for Andrea Horwath. What'd you learn from that you would apply to next time?
So I actually tend to agree with Carl. I think spending time out in communities in all parts of the province is a very important thing for Marit to be doing right now. And I would point out that she actually is doing that work since she formally launched her leadership bid. By my count, scouring her social media, she's been to at least 18 places. And we're talking about regions where we hold seats from Ottawa to Waterloo. We're talking about regions where we lost ridings in the last election, like Timmins. And we're also talking about regions where we don't have a presence, places like Barrie. So I think that's really important work for Marit to be doing.
Would you advise her to go to Barrie, a seat the NDP has never won? Would you say that's a good use of time?
Look, we're talking about growing and strengthening and expanding support for the party. So I do think, you're going to be looking at places like the 905. I think you want to expand in places of strength like Northern Ontario and Southwestern Ontario. Absolutely.
I should just put this to you, Sarah. I mean, Andrea Horwath made a lot of visits to Brampton over the previous 4 years. Didn't help you hold your seat. Ultimately, it did not. So is it still worth it to put that to labor in those vineyards that so often don't pay off for you?
Well, I think it's important to show up, and I think for community that matters. When we look at Andrea being in Brampton time and time again, it did matter. Unfortunately, the results were what they were, but
helped you the first time,
it absolutely helped the first time. And I think there were many factors at play the second time around that resulted in the outcomes that we had. But I think it matters to community. To Michelle's point, I think showing up in places like Barrie or Newmarket, where we may not have had a seat, or maybe it seems unlikely that we would win there. I think for the base and New Democrats and progressives in those communities, it does matter that the leader is showing up.
Kim.
I'll also say this. The population shifts that we've seen, especially during the pandemic, people moving out of downtown Toronto, which used to be hotbed central for New Democrats, have now moved into places like Barrie and Belleville and all sorts of places across the province. The communities in which people are living have changed the dynamics. People are now seeing virtual care that they got during the pandemic now being cut. So they not only don't have a local doctor, but they don't even have access to the care that they were getting before. All of these things matter. So that's when you see those shifts in seat demographics, those conversations. And have they met Marit on the ground? Have they worked with her? Have those riding associations have the ability to translate? All of those shifting dynamics as you build community are really at play. And that's where I think Marit has the ability to capitalize and move from official opposition and premier in waiting to the premier's office.
Robin, let's do an example of this. Pretty soon there's going to be a debate, if it's not already happening, in her opposition leader's office with some staffers saying, you know what, Marit, we need you in the House every day, looking like a premier in waiting, putting those tough questions to Doug Ford. And there will be other people saying, no, 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 we need you out in the hustings. We need you out in the ridings. We need to introduce you more to people beyond downtown Toronto. How should she resolve that?
Tell the people in Group A to polish their resumes. I mean, it is really, really not a useful strategy for an opposition person to think they're going to get elected from Queen's Park. It just doesn't happen. And I think that Marit has an advantage over Andrea, at the risk of being unkind to my friend. She connects better with women. And one of the challenges that Andrea faced, which I could never understand, was that she did not have a significant gender gap, as progressives and the Democrats usually do. I think if I may just bootleg a Liberal perspective in here for a second, I think it's very likely the next leader is going to be Yasser Naqvi. And if it is somebody of his prominence and history, it gives her an additional card to play. Those 3 chapters I described at the beginning began with the defeat of the Rae government, moved into the Harris era, and then into McGuinty, and then Kathleen Wynne, and were picked up by Ford. If you draw a line about housing costs or health deterioration, it goes back through the Liberal era. So she's got an ability to get up on stage and say, look, you've tried with these 2 people, and they've constantly disappointed you. Time to try a new approach. I guess finally I would say, Steve, that the dilemma that the Liberals have to recover is that they still have not escaped the negative view of their period in government that built up during the end of Kathleen Wynne's era. So it's always there to be whipped by any opponent as proof of why you shouldn't vote Liberal. Well, and there's also Justin Trudeau federally, and we know how often in Ontario history Ontarians vote for Liberals in Ottawa and Liberals at Queen's Park. Almost never happens. Carl, let me go to you next with this. Doug Ford won his first election in 2018 essentially without a platform. He put very little policy in the window. And New Democrats, of course, are famous for putting enough policy in the window to drown you. So my question for you is, would you advise Marit Stiles that she needs to be heavy on policy and prove to people that she has a grasp of that? Or is it better for her to sort of be known as the politician, the leader you'd like to have a beer with? Which is it?
Well, I'd rather have a beer with a leader than to talk about 200 policies. It doesn't matter to people. The reality is that she needs to have a grasp. She cannot be caught, like a deer in the headlights, not knowing what she's talking about at any given moment. But it doesn't mean that she's pushing those policies. It doesn't mean that she's the one raising those issues. Pick 3, 4, at 5, you're already pushing it. And then run with those. And then be known and own these issues. Because if you're trying to be all things to all people, you're not going to succeed. So that's the challenge, right? To be able to compete with the other parties on any given issue, but to own 3, 4, maximum 5 issues. And if these issues become the voting motivating factor, then you're in good position to form government. But if you don't choose the right issues, and if you don't own those issues when voting day comes, then you're going to fail.
Sarah, it's going to be pretty tough for any party leader to out-folksy Doug Ford. So what does she have to do on that front?
Well, I think Marit, like I said earlier, is very relatable. People really like her, because she is punchy. She's got that swagger. And so I think that will be a huge benefit. And I definitely agree with Carl. I think that we need to streamline what the platform looks like and what we're offering to Ontarians. And I think in communicating that, Marit will be able to effectively connect. I think we need to be, as a party, also seen as more than just the sort of protest party in opposition. I think we need to be proposing real solutions that are going to help Ontarians out right now. We're dealing with sky-high inflation. Housing costs are out of control. I think if we're able to select a few top issues and connect well, that will help Marit go a long way in contrasting what is Doug Ford's folksiness.
Kim, she's about to be acclaimed as the NDP leader on the weekend, and that's not her fault that nobody else jumped into the race, but it is the reality. A lot of the attention that she would have otherwise got with a great race did not happen. A lot of the events that she would plan around running for the leadership did not happen. The signing up of new members, the raising of a lot of money did not need to happen because she won with acclamation. How much does that handicap her as she tries to become better known?
Well, I think it's important to be clear. There was a race. From election night onward, everyone was burning up the phone lines, burning up the conversations, signing up new members. So it may not have seemed that way to the headline writers, but certainly as New Democrats, we were hearing from potential candidates, people were organizing, and what we saw with Marit's campaign was that everyone just went to the natural place where they were likely going to get to anyway, which is, of course, Marit Stiles should be the next leader. And she's got a team, she's raised money, she's got presence, she's got charisma, she connects with people. She, all throughout the last campaign, was out on the hustings and in ridings that pundits might have written off, but she was out there doing the things.
All true, but no contest, though.
So I will say this, that having been part of leadership campaigns, including the last Ontario NDP one, it doesn't get you a giant bounce to come out of it. It might got you a couple of things, but Marit was always going to be the headline. She was always going to end up being the leader at the end of the day. So let's just cut to the chase and stop giving opposition research things to mess around with. But I am super excited about Marit because she has walked the talk in the party, because she can do the public events. She can do wholesale, she can do retail. And I am so excited that she is the next incoming leader and what she can do with that. I saw her speech at the Rural Ontario Municipal Association. She introduced herself to people, she talked policy, and she got people really interested. Who is Marit Stiles and how can we create a new relationship with her? That's what I'm looking for in a leader.
What about that? The fact that there's no big, exciting contest, multi-ballot, lots of tension, elbows up. You missed all of that this time. Is that a problem for her?
Ask John Horgan, ask Danny Williams, ask Brad Wall.
You're giving examples of people who have won their leadership
These
without
are
contests.
Unopposed leaders
who became premiers.
Who became premier next election. So I look forward to seeing Marit join that club. And I would say, too, that Marit has this opportunity now because while the Liberals are competing with one another to see who's going to be the next leader, she's going to be busy out connecting with communities, doing the work that she needs to do to build to a win in 2026. I think she'll spend some time in the legislature, showing that she's standing up to Doug Ford. But yeah, I think she has a really important opportunity and window right now.
Okay, this is a show about the New Democrats, but the Liberal Party's name has come up numerous times. And we got to go there now. Okay, Sheldon, let's bring up this graphic here, middle of page 3. Who's the bigger threat? And here are the results from the 2022 just completed Ontario general election. The NDP got 23.74% of the total vote, good for 31 seats, a pretty efficient vote. The Liberals actually got more votes, 23.85% of the total vote, only good for 8 seats. Not a very efficient vote. And let's not forget the third progressive alternative as well, the Greens, who got just shy of 6%, only good for 1 seat. This is, as you all know, a perfect result for the Progressive Conservative Party because their opposition is almost exactly evenly divided. So my question is, and Robin, why don't you start us off with this, do the NDP have to worry more about defeating the Liberals to become the champions of the progressive voter next time before they worry about defeating Doug Ford?
No, I think it's more complicated than that, Steve. I think, first of all, we all have to deal with the reality that 3 out of 5 Ontario citizens do not vote. That's a huge pond to fish in. So I think one of the first strategic decisions I would make would be, where are all those voters who aren't voting? Address them demographically and geographically and try and pump up turnout. That will determine the next election almost more than anything else, I think, if one party is capable, as Trudeau was in 2015, for example, in dramatically increasing the youth vote. I think the Liberal problem is baggage. I think that the problem that anyone who inherits the leadership of that party is going to face is a lot of bad memories of the Liberal era. And I think the way for the NDP to exploit that is to simply put them in the same basket. You could compare the failures of the Wynne government on healthcare with the failures of the Ford government on healthcare. There's a thread running right across that period that I think allows the NDP to say, we're different. We have new ideas, and we don't have that baggage having failed you for 25 years.
Carl, what about it? Do they have to become the champions of the progressive voter before they take on the Tories?
Well, they have to become the alternative to Doug Ford, and they can't allow the Liberals to become that alternative. So there is a race there. It's a race for second place, because in as much as the NDP has a lot more seats, they have basically the same number of votes. So the challenge remains. Now, the key for the NDP is that to gain official opposition, they were able to count on the efficiency of their vote. But that's not going to be enough to form government, because you need to win a lot more seats. So you need, without creating a wave, you need to increase your support everywhere in order for that to happen. And that's the key challenge. And Robin pointed out to voters that are not voting, that's a challenge to get them out. If you succeed in exciting them and getting them out, you have a better chance of being able to yourself form government. But you can't dismiss the Liberals, especially if they merge with the Green Party, like it sounds like they want to do, because that could create a new dynamic that could attract people.
Well, you're referring to the fact that there's a bit of a draft movement right now to try to get Mike Schreiner to run for the Ontario Liberal leadership, and that will be the subject for another program, I hope, because that's a great story. Sarah, you represented a 905 riding. Did you consider the Liberals or the Conservatives the greater threat to your success?
Certainly in the last election in 2018, it was definitely the Liberals that we were fighting. And I think in this election, it was definitely the Conservatives that were the larger threat. But what we saw a lot of in the 905 was strategic voting at play, where people were almost feeling as though they were forced to make a decision between two progressive alternatives. And I think that's where, Conservatives really benefited, was from the strategic vote. So I think a big part of this is that we need to ensure that progressive voters understand that we are the progressive choice, and make sure that that connects well with them. I think another part is making sure that in the regional differences, that those issues and those policies that we're going to put forward are going to connect with those voters. So I think that it's a combination of things at play here. But I think that with Marit coming in as our new leader, I think that people will be excited about what she has to offer and what she brings to the table, perhaps something we didn't see in the last election.
Okay, Kim, just a few minutes to go here, and I want to try this just finally. The conventional wisdom in Ontario politics, may be right, may be wrong, but it is the conventional wisdom, is that the biggest chunk of voters are in the middle, and you have to appeal to them. This is not a province of extremes. You got to appeal to the biggest chunk of voters in the middle. If that's true, in your judgment, how hard should the NDP hit issues related to social justice, related to taking down statues, related to changing place names, which is they are very important issues with a segment of the electorate, but not necessarily the biggest chunk of the electorate. How do they handle that?
Yeah, I think that's always going to be part of the conversation. But I think when you talk about these labels, the progressives or the conservatives, there are a lot of what used to be Bill Davis conservatives who are now part of New Democrats. What I'm looking for with Marit is that she builds communities. It doesn't matter where you are on the socioeconomic spectrum. Can you go to your local library? Can you get healthcare service? Can you age in place? And so many people can't. I look at my hometown in rural southern Ontario.
Which town?
It's called Tilbury, Ontario. Shout out to the Tilbury folks. It's just on the border between Kent and Essex counties. You can't find decent rental housing. You have lots of people who have moved away from home for economic reasons. You also, if you happen to live in a small town, you don't have access to services that aren't 20, 30 minutes down the road. And what happens when you don't drive? There's no interconnectivity to healthcare or any other care. So how do you make sure that you're able to keep building these communities, age in place, showcase the extraordinary rich history, farm, agricultural, cultural, sport, recreation that has come from these communities and go to the next level? That's what I'm looking for Ontario. And that's where, we can get distracted by some of the outlying issues. But fundamentally, where people live and play every day is how are they going to pay their bills? Where are they going to live? Can they get the mental health support that we all absolutely need to have? Can you still go to high school in your hometown? And how does that build for the next generation? And if you don't have a leader showing up in the next campaign and over the next 3 years that can talk about those issues, those voter turnout numbers are going to continue to be abysmal.
Let me save the last minute for Michelle. Do you want to weigh in on that?
Well, I think Marit, on a personal level, is someone who has really broad appeal. I think that as she's been going out and connecting with people in communities across the province, she's really somebody who's able to draw people in who may not traditionally be part of the NDP family. And, you know, having worked with her, having gotten to know her, you know, it really speaks to her authenticity and the way that, you know, you can tell she cares. You know, she's the kind of person...
No, I get that, but should she spend a lot of time talking about taking down statues and changing street names?
Well,
No.
That's a no from Robin Sears. What says you, Michelle?
Well, I think there's space in the orange tent, you know, to talk about different issues. I think, you know, obviously some of the big issues facing the province right now are, you know, the issues like healthcare and the crisis that we're seeing in our hospitals. So, you know, in terms of the big issues, I think healthcare will be one of them to be spending time talking about.
Gotcha. I'm sure she appreciates all the free advice that you five have given her tonight on TVO, and we're grateful that we were able to facilitate this. Carl Boulanger, Robin Sears, Sarah Singh, Kim Wright, Michelle Irvin. Great to have all of you on our program tonight. Stay well, everybody.
Thank you.
The latest word from the Canadian Centre on Substance Use and Addiction is that, quote, no amount of alcohol is safe to consume. That's prompted a reevaluation of Canada's recommendations on consumption of alcohol and has people debating whether it's time to put warning labels on booze. Let's see what we can contribute to that conversation with, in the nation's capital, Senator Patrick Brazeau, who has a bill before the Senate to amend the Food and Drugs Act to get warning labels put on alcoholic beverages. And here in our studio, Sabrina Mado, columnist for the National Post. And Sabrina, it's good to have you back on our program. And Senator Brazeau, it's been a long time. It's great to have you back as well.
Thank you for having me.
Let's do this here off the top here. We're going to go through these guidelines again. I know they've captured a lot of attention, but just in case, Sheldon, you want to bring this graphic up? Canada's guidelines on alcohol and health. Alcohol, the Centre says, is a leading preventable cause of death, disability, and social problems, including certain cancers, cardiovascular disease, liver disease, unintentional injuries, and violence. In 2017, alcohol, they say, caused 18,000 deaths in Canada. The continuum of risk associated with weekly alcohol consumption is as follows: low for individuals who consume 2 standard drinks or less per week, moderate for those who consume between 3 and 6 standard drinks per week, increasingly high for those who consume 7 standard drinks or more per week. Mandatory labeling of all alcoholic beverages with health warnings is advised so people know the health risks involved. Okay, Senator, coming to you first, you've introduced Bill S-254 in the Senate. What's it about?
Well, essentially, it's a bill that would require the alcohol industry to put warning labels on their product because since 1988, alcohol has been classified as a Class 1 carcinogen, just like asbestos and tobacco. But yet we don't see any warning signs on that product. And so, you know, because of my personal problems several years ago, I started doing some research and looking into the effects of alcohol. And, you know, since then, we've worked with the researchers, the Canadian researchers at the University of Victoria, who have conducted this research for many, many years. And so the fact that alcohol causes cancer is not really in question, but the fact that only 75% or only 25% of Canadians are aware that alcohol consumption can cause cancer. And so I thought, given my personal history, that every single Canadian should be aware of this fact, and it'll be up to them to make more informed changes. But before they can do that, we need to have clear, factual information on that product.
Just in case some don't know, you have been very candid and brave in coming forward and saying alcohol almost ruined your life. Took you down a very dark path, and as a result, that has contributed to your understanding of what, in your judgment, is required here. Sabrina, warning labels on alcohol, do you think they're an effective way for people to rethink their use of the product?
In short, no. And the reason why that is researchers have looked into this, whether it's at York University, University of Alberta, Harvard, and what they found is that these types of warning labels are very low value. They don't provide enough information for consumers to make a proper choice. Often consumers also tune them out. There are better ways to communicate about risks in this day and age than putting warning labels on everything. When you can't communicate information, what are the labels for? To scare people. They're about spreading fear. And in public health, we know that's not a good way to operate, whether it's scaring people or stigmatizing a product or the people that consume that product. That doesn't lead to productive outcomes, and it can lead to other issues, as we've seen lately in the pandemic. Now, many people who advocate for labeling alcohol reference cigarette warnings, that we put those on cigarette packages back in the 1960s. That's half a century ago. I think we know a lot more now about human behavior, psychology. We have so many more ways to educate people and spread information in more positive ways that we don't need to be relying on this very old school method.
Senator Brazeau, you have not convinced Sabrina yet. What would you say to try to bring her over that the warning labels really just promote fear and not really information?
Well, it's unfortunate because I have experience with this, and it's unfortunate that we have to have converging issues, and this shouldn't be up for debate. I mean, alcohol consumption does cause cancer. It's a class 1 carcinogen, and so this is not anti-alcohol. It's not anti-industry. It's about cancer. It's about doing something preventative for cancer, like we did with tobacco smoking. And all I'll say is that I will respectfully disagree with Ms. Nadeau because in 2018 in the Yukon, there was a 30-day period where there were warning labels on alcohol over there. And in 1 month, so 30 days, there was a reduction in sales of 7%. And so it is not true that these warning labels, don't affect people, because if only 25% of Canadians are aware that alcohol consumption causes cancer, well, I fail to see Ms. Nadeau's position and others, because this is all about having preventable measures for cancer and fighting cancer, because alcohol has existed since the beginning of time, and cancer, we haven't found a cure yet. And so, like tobacco smoking, we know now that alcohol is a carcinogen, and we need to label it so that at least so that we can get the 25% number higher, because consumers deserve that, and it should be their right to have that information.
Okay, let me put that to Sabrina, which is, I mean, some of the labeling on cigarette packages is awfully stark and grim nowadays in telling people that this is going to kill you. I mean, are you saying that hasn't had any influence at all on the reduction of smoking in our society?
It may have had some, but you have to remember that those labeling came in with a bunch of other measures. It came in with taxes. We put cigarettes behind screens. There were a lot of other messages going on and legislation happening at the same time. So we, can't single out how effective those labels were. In terms of educating consumers, I'm in agreement with the senator that that's important. Consumers should be educated. They should know the risks. My question is labeling the best way to do this? Because a lot of studies have shown it simply isn't, especially since we labeled cigarettes in the 60s. We went through a period in the 80s where lots of products ended up with labels on them. And what ended up happening, what Harvard found, was what they called the wolf versus puppy syndrome. So when you label all the puppies, the consumer can no longer tell what the big bad wolf really is. And there's this confusion. They end up tuning them all out, and actually trust in public health and these messages go down. So this is just simply not a good way to communicate these messages. And the message that alcohol is a carcinogen and can cause cancer is absolutely true. But we also need to look at absolute versus relative risk. So what we found for some of these cancers is that, for example, your risk of getting the cancer in general might be 0.002%. Does alcohol after a certain point increase that risk by 100%? Maybe, but then you have a risk of 0.004%. And now if a consumer sees a big scary label and they go to do their own research and they find that out, guess what? Trust goes down and our ability to communicate genuine risk with people is compromised.
Senator Brezo, have you had any conversations with people in the alcohol industry, and are they open to your labeling idea?
Actually, I have had none to date. Obviously, there are some people who have events and receptions here on the Hill for parliamentarians, but I don't participate in those. But you know, having said that, again, it should be the responsibility of the alcohol industry. And since 1988, they've known it's a carcinogen, a class 1 carcinogen, and they have done absolutely nothing about it. And so this is why it's important that people, even if people have differing views, completely differing views from my bill to S254, well, we should be supporting this bill to get it before committee so that we can have the actual experts, not just opinionated people, come before committee and provide the research and the clear research before we go off on tangents and just provide our opinions. Everything that is included in Bill S254 has been done so because we're following research, we're following science, and we're following Canadian science. And so if there are going to be people out there, naysayers, and people thinking that this is a nanny state, well, it's not. Let's get this before committee and let's have a full, wholesome debate on the effects of alcohol in terms of cancer, because Bill S254 is only about the causal link between alcohol consumption and cancer. It doesn't touch upon all the other social impacts, the legal impacts, drinking and driving, the whole gamut of issues. It's strictly cancer, alcohol, and cancer.
Let me do a follow-up with you on this, and that is, I wonder whether part of your difficulty is that you also need to convince provincial governments, like, for example, the government of Ontario, which realizes about $2.5 billion a year through the Liquor Control Board of Ontario. I mean, they've got an interest in selling as much booze as possible. Are you fighting them as well?
No, my fighting days are over, since I lost a pretty famous boxing match. But, but I'm continuing the fight. I lost my mother in 2004 to lung cancer, and I had promised her at the time that I would do everything that I could to raise awareness about cancer. And this is what I'm trying to do. I mean, this piece of legislation is not hurting anybody. It's not affecting anybody. It's not telling people what to do, what they should or should not drink. Because the CSA provided advice. So advice, you could take that advice or you could leave it. But the important thing is that every single Canadian in this country should be aware and should know, because it's a fact, that alcohol consumption can cause cancer. And as a matter of fact, it can cause as much as 7 types of deadly cancers. And if only 25% of Canadians are aware of that, I think it's very shameful, because we are dealing with a poison.
You referenced your fighting days being over, and in case anybody missed the reference, that's the reference to the very famous boxing match you had with the guy who turned out to be the current Prime Minister of Canada, and we understand that you're not in the ring anymore. Okay. Sabrina, I want to ask you about the piece you wrote in the National Post, in which you called the study that has been referenced here fatally flawed in favor of fear-mongering. Now, besides good alliteration there, why did you come to that conclusion?
Because the study led with all these very scary graphics, again, about no amount of alcohol being safe, drastically reducing the alcohol guidelines, and basically telling people, if you drink, you're going to get cancer. I had people messaging me, good friends, thinking they were literally going to die because they've been having a glass of wine with dinner twice a week for the last few years. And that is not productive messaging, especially when these people find out that's not exactly true. When you dive into the full 89-page report, and the CCSA, this is directly from their report, they said publicly, we've been combing through 6,000 sources. Well, okay, that means there are 6,000 sources in general. What you find out in the fine print is that only 16 of those sources were actually ultimately used, because some of those 6,000 were duplicates of one another outside the scope. They were biased. So we're only working with 16 sources. And then you keep reading down these 89 pages and you find out that the CCSA themselves say they couldn't assess the risk of bias, that they say that unsurprisingly, the quality of these sources were low, and they also didn't take into account confounding factors. So when we're looking at the lifetime risk of alcohol, and we're looking at people who are probably older and who have since been diagnosed with cancer and possibly tragically passed, and we're saying, okay, these people have been drinking their whole lives, well, they were probably drinking in smoky bars. There are other lifestyle influences that come into effect, and because of ethics reasons, they can't do blind test trials where they say don't drink to some people and drink a lot to others. That's obviously unethical. So the reality is we don't really know. And the problem is the messaging from the CCSA is so much more certain and so much more scary than the evidence they actually have.
Let me pick up on that, because you said this is not productive messaging.
Yes.
What would be more productive messaging, in your view?
I think we encourage more transparent conversations. So rather than coming out with these very definitive statements that maybe can be backed up and maybe not, we do public messaging campaigns. We don't just have a highlight scary thing. In terms of labels, that's the problem too. You end up with one line or a big scary image. I would like to see more education in schools. I would like to see PSAs that approach this message in a more in-depth sort of way.
Public service announcements.
Public service announcements, absolutely. And I absolutely think that we should also support more people when it comes to substance abuse and addiction, and provide more supports and education in those areas.
Senator, there is I think it's fair to say, a widely held view in society that alcohol, while acknowledging the dangers, is a socially acceptable way to change your brain, if I can put it that way, whereas there are some other things in society which are not. And I wonder how much of an obstacle you see that, namely the socially acceptable nature of booze, in your mission here.
Well, look, it's also a fact that approximately 80% of Canadians, drink alcohol. And again, we have to differentiate between what the new guidelines that came out last week. And we have to look at Bill S-254 separately, because the guidelines, again, are advice from professionals with respect to what people should be drinking. But it's advice. But Bill S-254 is simply looking at the rights of consumers, because, like I said, I'm going to repeat this again, only 25% of Canadians are aware that alcohol consumption can cause cancer. And this is not reinventing the wheel. We did this with tobacco companies. And so, we should be doing the same thing, because it's a class 1 carcinogen. And so it's unfortunate to hear people defending, this issue, because, if I look at many First Nations people across this country who have been, not just fighting, but trying to survive because of post-generational trauma, and looking to substances and alcohol. I mean, this type of messaging that we're hearing from Ms. Maddow is certainly not helping. And so I think that if one label can save a life, I think it's better than not having any labels. Wouldn't you agree?
Senator, your messaging's a bit mixed here, because you were just talking about how your bill is focused on cancer and cancer only, and yet now we're hearing that it's being tied into all these other issues. And also, just before, when you were speaking,
I never said that.
You did say that, and you were referencing before the CCSA report as part of your reasoning for putting this bill forward, and now you're trying to distance yourself a little bit.
Well, I think you're like I said, it's unfortunate that we're having a debate on this. I mean, I don't see you as being pro or fighting, against cancer, unfortunately. But having said that, I'm not distancing myself from anything. I support, obviously I support Bill S-254, and there's more and more people from the medical fields who are lending us support, because somebody actually provided a platform for them to speak in favor of this bill, because it's needed. needed. And so I'm going to take, obviously I'm going to take a close look at this, but I'm going to be looking at the, more and more medical people supporting this rather than having, reporters or journalists or having, non-experts in this field. And I'm not an expert either. But, this is why it's important to get this before committee so it's properly studied. And so Canadians have an inside view of what the factual information out there. It's as simple as that. Why wouldn't anybody support that?
Well, I hope you also bring in experts on public health messaging that can speak to how spreading fear and stigma is often not productive.
Can I follow up on that with you, Sabrina? Canada is perceived to be a world leader when it comes to warning labels on tobacco, on cannabis. Why should alcohol get a pass?
Well, there are many things that cause cancer. Bacon, processed meats. Are we going to start labeling everything? Again, we run into this puppy versus wolf issue, and we end up in a low information environment where consumers tune everything out. Again, we're not in disagreement that Canadians should be better informed, that they should absolutely be able to assess risk. The question is how to do that. And the reality is there is only so much public willpower and funding and so many bills that are going to pass the Senate, and shouldn't they be better focused on something that's more productive and going to be more impactful?
Senator Brazo, have you got any colleagues in the Senate who are with you on this?
Yes, and we're resuming the winter session today, and so over the break there were several senators who indicated that they were going to speak in favor of this bill. And like I said, this is not a fight against the industry. It's not a fight against provincial governments, because all I have to do personally to get this bill through is convince a majority of senators in the Senate. That's all I can do. I can't guarantee it would pass in the House of Commons. That's hypothetical. But my job is to convince a majority of senators. And if the majority of senators decide at some point that this bill is not deemed to or shouldn't be passed, then we'll communicate that in the future. But there's work that has to be done, and hopefully we're going to get this passed, get it before committee, and study it properly for the benefit of all Canadians and all Canadian consumers.
Well, one thing we love on this program is a good, vigorous, yet civilized debate. And we just had that. So I'm grateful to you both, Senator Patrick Brazo and Sabrina Maddow from the National Post. My thanks to both of you for coming on to TVO tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And that is the agenda for Tuesday, January 31st, 2023. As part of our ongoing partnership with ROMA, the Rural Ontario Municipal Association, tomorrow we'll explore how aging in smaller and remote communities in Ontario presents special challenges. Also, we'll tell you what a NORC is, N-O-R-C, if you don't already know, and why a growing number of seniors see them as a real opportunity. I'm Steve Paikin. Thanks for watching TVO, for joining us online at TVO.org, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
The Agenda is always on. To catch up on conversations from this week or any week, visit our website, tvo.org/theagenda. or our YouTube page at youtube.com/theagenda. It's all there for whenever you want to watch.